My name's Fabian. I'm a licensed advisor at New Zealand Shores here in Hamilton, New Zealand. It is Tuesday morning in Hamilton, and the team at New Zealand Shores wanted to give you all an update on the New Zealand borders and potential immigration changes for this year, for 2021. And a very happy new year to all. We're all very glad that 2020 is behind us, and we look forward to bringing good news for our clients for 2021, hopefully. Today we have Julia Cook, licensed advisor working from our branch in the South Island, Nelson, and Charlotte Natouche, licensed advisor working with me from our main office in Hamilton. Happy New Year to you too. And I really look forward to another year working with you guys. So we've been back at work for just about a week now, and we certainly have been very busy as Immigration New Zealand is indeed processing visas, just not every visa quite yet. Not for everyone then. Charlotte, let's start with the current state of border restrictions. Can you let us know who can and who cannot yet travel to New Zealand?
Absolutely. So the current restrictions are similar to what was in place just before Christmas. At this stage, we're only seeing the following categories processed. So partners of New Zealanders or New Zealand residents, healthcare workers, and then other workers with critical purpose or unique skills. In addition to that, they have also started processing some investment-based and entrepreneur visas as well. But those people aren't yet able to enter. So the partners are Kiwis, health workers, and critical workers. These people typically at the moment are arriving on what's called a critical purpose visitor visa with work rights, or no work rights, depending on their situation. Then once they're onshore, that's when we move into applying for those typical essential skills, partner of Kiwi, or work to residence work visas for them, depending on their situation. And that's kind of just the standard process that it was pre-COVID.
Right. So these travelers who can actually apply for a visa, are there going to be any additional requirements for them due to the restrictions?
Absolutely. Everyone coming into New Zealand, regardless of who they are or where they come from, needs to undertake a 2-week quarantine in our managed isolation facilities, which are organised by the government on arrival. A person from the US or the UK also needs to present a negative COVID test as well, and I believe that has to be done 72 hours before travel. We're also waiting to see whether or not that will be extended to other countries. Highly likely that it will be.
Yeah, it sounds possible, likely. So Julia, this is for temporary visa holders or visa applicants. What about people granted residence while they were offshore? There could be a few of those.
Well, if you were granted residence while offshore, perhaps as a dependent child or partner of somebody who's already in New Zealand, the good news is that you do meet the criteria to come to New Zealand, but of course you're going to be subject to the isolation like everyone else. So you may have to pay for the quarantine, or in some cases the fee may be waived. It just depends on your situation.
Right, okay. So whether you need to pay for quarantine or not, I recall a very handy diagram on the quarantine website, which is miq.govt.nz, and it will help determine whether you can get that fee waived or not. Julia, a lot of families or couples have been apart for a long time now. What are the options for these people?
Well, if your partner's a New Zealander, a New Zealand citizen or resident, and you're from a visa waiver country, there's about 60 countries are visa waiver. They can seek a critical purpose visitor visa in parallel to the usual partnership application. The benefit of having the critical purpose visitor visa is that it comes through quite quickly in about a month, whereas the partnership work visa is typically taking 5 to 7 months at the moment. So this allows the partner to fly over on the critical visitor visa while the other visa continues to be processed in the background. So if your partner is a New Zealand citizen or resident and you're not from a visa waiver country, then you can apply for the partnership-based work visa, but you don't yet qualify for the critical purpose visa to enter. So you'll just have to wait until the processing of the partner work visa is completed. So you'll be waiting around the 5 to 7 months for that to happen. So depending on the circumstances, you may or may not have to fly with a supporting New Zealand partner. So it's better if you contact us, we can guide you through that and let you know what your particular situation is going to be.
Yeah, there's quite a few different criteria that will
Yeah.
determine whether you're eligible to apply for a visa in the first place, and if so, which visa, which visas, so what sort of process you have to go through. If you're not sure, just get in touch with us. So Charlotte, these partnership-based visas, Julia talked about partners of New Zealand citizens or New Zealand residents. Are there such visas available for partners of workers yet?
Unfortunately not. This is one of the groups that has probably been most heartbreaking for us over the last 12 months. We've got countless families and clients who have been separated since the border closed, which has become really frustrating because we thought every time there's an announcement, we thought surely they'll be in the next announcement, but we're still waiting. So at the moment, you cannot apply for a visa based on partnership if you are the partner or dependent child of a worker. Even if you held a work visa or a dependent child visa that was approved prior to the border being closed, you can't enter either. The only people who are able to enter are people who were already living in New Zealand for a period of time before the border closed and who got stuck offshore. So yeah, we often see one person fly over, secure a job, and then a work visa from New Zealand, and the rest of the family applies for a visa from offshore to join. If you were in this situation, COVID hit, your applications are probably on hold, and the current restrictions do not allow for you to enter. So we understand it's immensely frustrating to countless families who've already made arrangements to leave their homes, their businesses, their jobs, and they've been apart for several months or up to a year, but at this stage, Immigration New Zealand is not processing these family applications. And we're not really seeing any exceptions made either under humanitarian criteria. So hopefully, fingers crossed, as we start to move into 2021, it's definitely one of the next groups that they look to allow entry to.
Fingers crossed, because that's really one of the most heartbreaking situations you can find yourself in. So we talked about exemptions and exceptions. Julia, what can you tell us about the most recent updates on the border exceptions? What sort of moves has the government made?
Well, they've tried to address the horticulture and education industries, and Immigration New Zealand has granted 2,000 visas to Pacific Islanders to work in the orchards over the next few months.
Right.
Yeah, this is the first major exception to date, but it comes at a cost since employers will have to bear the cost of all of those people going into quarantine. The latest update we've just had is that 1,000 international students are able to return to complete their studies in New Zealand. So this supposes that you started the studies here on a student visa already and were outside of New Zealand, perhaps on holiday when COVID actually hit. Education providers are going to nominate students and get in touch with them directly if they meet the criteria, which will result in an invitation to apply for a new student visa to come back to New Zealand to complete the studies. The downside is that you're going to have to show an increase in maintenance funds available, and that's been put up to 20,000 per year of intended year of study, which is quite hefty.
On the good side, if you were with your family in New Zealand at that point, you can return to New Zealand with your family, of course, but you are going to have to apply for a new student visa, and the maintenance funds requirement has increased as well. So when's the next deadline, or when can we expect the next announcements or a bit more movement on those border restrictions?
At this stage, the next milestone is May. Until then, Immigration New Zealand is not going to process any offshore applications or allowed to submit new applications outside of the criteria that we've already talked about. This could be revisited in light of the changes in the global pandemic management and the vaccine campaigns throughout the world. Rather than a full reopening of applications and borders, it's very likely that we're going to see further small categories of people being allowed to travel under the critical purpose visa. So we have that limited capacity for managed isolation and quarantine, which is officially the main reason for limiting numbers of arrivals. We could see further exemptions if the availability of isolation facilities was set to increase. And I think doing it in stages with the different visa types or requirements that New Zealand needs desperately might be the way forward.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It depends on what the country is going to need in the next few months. And we've seen that with the kind of easing of restrictions they've done with Pacific Islanders being allowed to come to support the horticulture industry, or those international students allowed back in to support the education sector. Charlotte, what about residence applications? Are there any movements there?
Yeah, for everyone who had applied onshore, residence applications have been processing almost non-stop since lockdown ended. So in New Zealand, we only had a 6-week lockdown effectively, and then Immigration New Zealand returned to work. And from that date, which was about mid-May, things have been rolling quite well. We've had dozens of approvals throughout that time. And we're also still submitting applications daily as well. So good movement on that front. At the moment, they are allocating skilled migrant residence applications, which was submitted in June 2019. However, what has been suspended is the fortnightly selection of expressions of interest for the skilled migrant category. So this has been on hold since March last year when the border closed. The pool is open for submissions, and we've been submitting EOIs for our clients, but the next selection is not due to take place until at least April. So for everyone who is in that pool, we're not really expecting any invitations to apply until then. But we are still submitting EOIs regularly as clients want to work on their documentation and get their EOIs onto the pool.
Right, and while your EOI is in the pool, you can update it if, for example, you get a new job or your circumstances change, right? So might as well get an EOI in while you can.
Absolutely, you can update a job offer, you can add points if you finish a New Zealand qualification or if your partner obtains skilled employment in New Zealand. So there's full flexibility on updating that application.
Right, so thank you for that. Now moving on to topics that will impact people already here in New Zealand. Are we anticipating any changes to visa categories, Julia, for this year?
Well, our economy is heavily reliant on overseas talents, and with closed borders, many companies are struggling to find the right staff. To alleviate the stresses on business, the government is trying to relax certain rules for existing work visa holders. For example, they've extended the employer-assisted work visas by 6 months twice already. This is, for example, the essential skills work visas or talent work visas. And they've also extended working holiday visas and any restrictions on them. And most people should have had those automatic notifications from immigration about that. But if you've got any doubts, then please do contact us and we can check for you. Visitor visas have also been extended by 6 months last year, but with overseas flights becoming more and more available, the government's not announced that they're going to give any further extensions to visitors at this point. But this could change, but we haven't seen that happen as yet. There is, however, a 2-month COVID short-term visitor visa that is meant for these visitors who need to buy a bit more time here to make travel arrangements back to their home country.
I guess it comes down to the availability of flights and border restrictions on their country of origin in the first place. Are we likely to see more of these automated extensions, you think?
Possibly. I mean, while the borders are shut, it's in Immigration New Zealand's interest to rely on these extensions. It's a really easy way for them to extend people's work rights without having to process countless variations or new visa applications for the same job. And it just adds more pressure to their processing capabilities and better focus.
It's all about supporting New Zealand businesses as well, I suppose. Charlotte, do we anticipate policy changes this year? I know the answer, but can you tell us a bit more about this?
Yeah, so pending further changes, of course, the big one that INZ is planning is to merge various work visas into one. So they're looking at merging 6 different categories of work visa into one. And all New Zealand employers will have to become accredited if they want to hire migrants. So there will also be different levels of accreditation. So for anyone who knows about accredited employers, that's also going to change a little bit. They're working on 3 levels and we should have more information on this soon, hopefully in the next month or 2, but who knows with immigration. Policy has not been released and nothing will be acted on until mid-year at least. But if you are an employer, you should go to our website under the employee section and download our brochure on the new accreditation system. One thing that will impact most work visa holders is the increase of the median wage from $25.50 to $27 per hour. This is the biggest change we've probably seen in the last 3 or 4 years. This will apply to skilled migrant residents category 2. So if you have a concern on this upcoming change, you should contact us and we can discuss with you how this may impact your application.
Right, so we're saying that from June or perhaps July, whenever this becomes active, in order to get a 3-year visa, you're going to need to be earning at least 27 per hour. Even to change the variation on your visas, you're going to have to earn the median wage that will be in place at that point. Cool. Yeah, thank you very much, both of you. That's all for the updates that we know of at this point. We'll continue to do these lives as we receive information and updates from Immigration New Zealand. The best idea to keep up to date is to like our Facebook page or visit our website at newzealandshores.com/news. Until then, if you're a client, contact your advisor if you have any concern or any question about your current circumstances, your plans, or your situation. If you're not a client yet, the best idea is to contact info at newzealandshores.com, and we'll come back to you with some answers. Thanks again, both of you, and keep well.